Hello, I'm Paul, support engineer for TIBCO Jaspersoft. Today I'm going to show you how to run a performance load test with an ad hoc report using JMeter. JMeter is a third-party software that you can find on their website. Here's a link to their website here if you need to download. We are using JMeter 4.0 currently for this testing. So the things that you'll need for this test and for this video, you'll need to download JMeter. You'll also need to make sure you have a Java JDK installed on your environment that you're running the testing on. And you also have to set the Java home for JMeter to use. The last and final thing you'll need is you'll need an ad hoc report to test on. So first, let's take a look at JMeter. This is the JMeter that I've downloaded. This is 4.0. So the first thing we'll need to do is we'll have to add a test plan. So by default, all this configuration is not there. You'll have to go to here, test plan, right click, go to add thread users, and then thread group. This will give you this thread group here, which we're going to do our testing on. So here, I'll go through this configuration here in a second. The report in question we're going to test on is this one here. This was automatically included into the default samples in the bundled installer for JasperReports Server. I'm also testing on 7.1. I know we have some older versions that are valid at the moment of this video recording, such as 6.4, but I'm using the newest version we have available right now, which is 7.1. And this is the report I'm using, the employees report. It's an ad hoc report. So let's go back to our testing. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to this thread group. In this thread group, 3 configurations we'll have to make are these configurations here. The first one is number of threads. This will simulate the users you will test with. This ramp up, this is going to take about 10 seconds before it runs each report. And then this is going to run each user, essentially is going to run 5 reports. So in all, we'll have 50 reports here testing. And then these are the, like I said earlier, these are the configurations we're going to use for our load test. You can add, any amount of users. If you have a bigger environment, with 3,000 users, you can put 3,000 there, and you can have them run one each, or whatever use case may be. These configurations here, you can change to anything that might work for you. So the second thing we're going to look at is this HTTP request. Again, you can add this by go to add. This one is going to be configuration element. And here's the HTTP request. So here, this is what we're going to be testing on. I have my environment installed on my local computer. So this is what I'm going to have configured here. I have local host, and then the default port number we're using is 8080. That's the default it uses for the bundled installer. And then here is actually the link we're going to use for the report. And then this is the report I'm going to show you here in a moment. And then these last parameters here, this is what you're going to use to log in with. I'm just simply using the super user default login credentials. Again, you'll probably have different login credentials or configure ones for your testing. This one, I'm just using the super user account. So the report in question we're using here is this employees report, as I mentioned earlier, and this is the path to the report right here. This looks a little different than what you see in the repository. But to get to that information, you just right click and go to properties, and here will be the path right here. And this is what I'm using in my test, as you can see. Right there. So I'm using the same exact path that it has in the properties file. Minus, the additional things I need to add for this link again. But yeah, so you'll just have to use these properties here. You'll have to take in my case, my URL will be localhost 8080 Jasper Server Pro. And then you'll configure that with the REST version 2 and then that path and the permissions there. The other thing we're going to be looking at is for this test, you have an option to save your response to a file. You can add that option by going to add and then listener. And then this one is going to be, we're going to use summary report as well as generate summary reports and view results in table. And then we're also going to use save response to a file. So these are the 3 options we're going to use here that we have. So the first one is save response to a file. You can add this anywhere. You just have to have a file path and it'll save it to a file. This is the main one I use for testing. This is going to write all your test results to a file and then save them into a table. This will show you each results for each table. This is the better looking of the results here. And then the summary report's going to show you a summary of all the things. I'll show you the differences here in a second once we run this test between the table and the summary reports. I personally like to view the results in the table because it gives you the results for each report. So since we have everything configured, let's go ahead and run this test. I'm doing a small test load. Again, your use case might be different. You can do a lot bigger test here. I'm only going to do 10 active users running 5 reports, running this report 5 times simultaneously, essentially. So let's go ahead and run this. And then, like I said, you have 10 seconds before it ramps up. And so here at the 10-second mark, you should see the first one executing. See, there it goes there. So for these here, this will show you the number of sample, the start time. This is your local time on your machine and configured on your server. This is the thread group right here. Of course, we're doing only HTTP requests at the moment. And this is how long it's taking in milliseconds to execute this. Now, this is pretty fast. Usually the first report, you'll see, take a little longer time because you're running that report for the first time. So what it's doing there is caching it, so it'll run a lot faster. As you can see, if you go down, it's almost half the time as it originally was. It's because this first report was not cached. Now every subsequent one is. And again, this is all depending on network and a lot of other factors, but this will give you a good idea of what a stress test will be in your environment. And then this is the byte here, the total bytes of bytes sent, and this is the latency. And then this is the connection time in milliseconds. So as you can see, my results in a table, this is what I like to refer to a little bit more than the summary report. The summary report will just give you a generalized summary of everything that's occurred. This is all in milliseconds, so the average time was 71 milliseconds, the minimum was 60, the maximum was 147. The standard deviation would be between the both would be 13.71 milliseconds. There's no errors. There's 1 second, throughput, receive kilobytes, send kilobytes, and average kilobytes. So again, I like to personally use the table for more detailed information that you can see. So let's go ahead, and what we'll do is we'll run this report again, but run it a little bit longer to see if we get different results. This was just a quick test. So let's kind of change our parameters a little bit here. So let's do 20 users running the report 5 times, so we'll get about double. So we can let's just do, this will give us a lot more information, probably more than we need, but let's just go ahead and take a look at what it looks like when we start this test. So I cleared everything here. You can use this button here. It'll clear all your information. So let's go ahead and start this again. And then it'll give you this prompt. What it is it saves your file. I have it configured that way to save this test. Essentially, you can overwrite this each time. So here it's waiting for that 10 seconds, and so it's starting again. And so as you can see, this is doing a lot more work than our previous test did. This is actually double the workload of our previous test. So you can see some of it's taking a little longer because you're having those active requests happening at the same time. So as you can see, even here in the sample time, you can see most of them are double, even some of them triple of what we originally saw. Like I said, we're doing a lot heavier test load here, so that's the difference you'll see immediately. And here you'll do about 100 samples. Okay, so there's our 100s. Like I said, this is gives us detailed information on every report ran. So I like looking at this a little bit more than the summary report. But the summary report will give us good information on the average of everything. Oh, it's still actually running these samples. That's right. I think I did 200. Yes, I did 200. 20 users running it 10 times. So I actually did 200. So we can continue looking at that. And like I said, this is going to be 4 times the amount of our initial testing that we did. And your use case might be different. You can test any amount of users, dependent on how big your environment might be and what your use case might be. Okay, so here it's finished. It's 200 results. Our summary report, as you were seeing last time, did change. It was changing while it was going, so it's a bit active when it's doing that. But here it gives us the information and a summary that we need, the information we might need, in total, and this gives us one for each report. So as I was saying, you can configure this any way you like. for the amount of users you have. And again, if you'd like to test another report, the report you create or anything, again, you would only have to change this information here where the report's located, and you can find that information in your server by going to right-clicking, go to Properties, and you'll see this path here. That path is the information you need to configure the stress test. My name is Paul. I'm a support engineer for TIBCO Jaspersoft. Thank you very much for watching.